In the name of God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Amen. This past week, I came across reports of the results of a survey that has just been released of over 4,000 Christian churches in the United States. It's the third or fourth in a series of surveys as to how churches came through and are coming out of the period of pandemic. It's a fascinating image of ups and downs, points of hope, and points less hopeful. In terms of money, there's more, but no one seems to know why. Charitable giving has increased in the last year across the United States, but it's increased in churches more than anywhere else. Numbers of people fluctuate. Those parishes and churches that have a presence online for worship as well as in person tend to have more folk on hand. But the average size of a congregation, not those who worship, but the average size of a congregation has dropped in the last 3 years nationally from 65 persons to 60 as the national average. There's a sense of optimism among people of a lot of churches. The number and percentage of parishioners volunteering has gone up. Clergy are a different story. Fascinating. The number of clergy who have actively thought not of leaving their present church, but of leaving the ministry altogether, has risen in the past 2 years, this shocked me, from 37% to 51%. 51% of Christian clergy across the United States are actively wondering whether they'll remain in the calling at all. This is at a point where in our diocese presently, just over half the congregations are looking for new clergy leadership. So again, a very mixed bag. But the real reason why I mention it this morning is because of Jesus' words to us in the gospel we've just heard from the 18th chapter according to Matthew.
Do you want me to get out?
It's okay. Welcome, Shirley. And welcome, Audrey. I would have to yell, welcome, Audrey, but I really shouldn't do that. And Dorothy. Behave yourself. The real reason why I thought of mentioning the study, which is brief and worth finding and reading, it's from the Hartford Institute, at all, is this. There is a section of the report which delights in the fact that parishes undergoing conflict, which is serious enough that some folk think of leaving the parish, that situation has dropped to only, this is how they say it, 30% of congregations nationwide. And again, I sat back and I said, whoa, almost 1/3 of congregations across the nation are experiencing, whatever might be the terms of it, conflict serious enough that some people think, I can't stay in this community. That's significant, and it could worry us even more than it should, unless we listen to Jesus in this morning's gospel. There in the 18th chapter of Matthew's gospel, Jesus gives counsel, advice as to what to do when there is division in the church. Now, Jesus would not bother to give advice on what to do when there is division in the church unless Jesus expected that there would be division in the church. And in fact, already by the next generation, St. Paul, in many of his letters, is urging reconciliation among the people of God in towns like the city of Corinth and others. And Jesus' advice is fascinating. It's simple, it's direct, and it comes to us, according to Scripture, directly from Jesus. What does it say? Well, despite the fact that it's simple and direct, it's something that I know I haven't done often enough in my time as a member of the church. Jesus says, and the names here have been changed to protect the innocent. Let's say that I find myself in conflict with someone in our church who might be named Robin. Now, this has never happened. But if that were the case, Jesus' advice is for me to go directly to that person and to say, I'm concerned about this, or I don't understand this, or this has hurt me, or have I hurt you in this way, and to talk it out. If that doesn't work, the counsel that Jesus gives is for me to meet again with Robin, but to first invite Jorge and maybe Augustinus and a few other people to come together with us so that we can talk together toward a resolution of the dilemma, toward a coming of peace. As I say, it's simple, it's direct, but what churches are justly famous for, including clergy, is that instead of going to Robin to talk about the problem first, I go to 3 other people and I say, did you hear what Robin said? Did you see what Robin did? That's called, many of you know this, triangulation, when it should be directly between 2 people and it becomes to involve at least 3. And the second one it should involve is involved least of all. I would like to call triangulation strangulation in terms of the actual health and well-being of a church community. And I've been guilty of that myself much too often during my years of ministry to the people of God. How do we move from, and why should we move from, leaning toward triangulation and lean into Jesus' teaching in Matthew 18? I think it's because God wills for us to be one people, to be comfortably in one another's presence, to bring joy to one another by our arrival, by the sight of us, by the sound of our voices. And so the prophet Ezekiel tells us today, "As I live, says the Lord God, I have no pleasure in the death of the wicked, but that the wicked turn from their ways and live." Turn back, turn back. By wicked, he simply means those of us who are prone to sin, which is at least me. It may be some of the rest of us in the room as well. That call from God, that offer of forgiveness and grace, is beautifully understood and expressed, as is the teaching of Jesus in Matthew 18 and Jesus' intent in the words we heard this morning from Paul's letter to the Romans. 3 verses, 3 tiny verses in chapter 13. I should probably have these written on the wall of the house, and maybe we all might. Listen to them again. Beautiful. Paul writes, owe no one anything except to love one another. For the one who loves another has fulfilled the law. He goes on, the commandments, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not covet, and any other commandment are summed up in this word: love your neighbor as yourself. Love does no wrong to a neighbor, therefore love is the fulfilling of the law, of the whole law. So, when some of your debtors come to you, your creditors, and they send you a bill and ask you to send money, you write back to them and say, my priest told me I only have one debt, and that debt is to love one another. It's the only debt we actually finally have, and it's the only debt that we keep on paying because we can never pay it off completely. And that's all right, because as we forgive one another, as we gift one another with the gift of love again and again and again, both of us, you and I, all of us, are growing, increasing, continually in our capacity to love, in our ability to love. I talked last week on the lawn about the fact that to be a Christian is to constantly be stretched beyond the borders we tend to set in terms of how far we're willing to love, how expansive I'm willing to allow my love to be. A beautiful example of this from Christian history comes to us from the life of Giovanni Bernardone, a young man from 12th century Assisi. That was his baptismal name. We know him as Francis of Assisi. And the year after his death, Thomas of Celano, in the first biography written ever of his life, of Francis's life, says this, and listen for where love is being stretched in Francis. Thomas writes, and then the holy lover of all humility betook Francis to the lepers. And Francis was with them, serving them all most zealously for God's sake, washing all foulness from them, and even wiping away the matter from the ulcers. Even as he says himself in his testament, for when I was in sin, Francis wrote, since it seemed to me exceeding bitter to even look on lepers. But the Lord brought me among them, and I showed mercy unto them." And Thomas continues, "For indeed at one time the sight of lepers was, as Francis used to say, so bitter to him that when in the days of his vanity he looked at their houses 2 miles off, he stopped his nostrils with his hands. But when now, by the grace and power of the highest, he was beginning to think of holy and profitable things, one day, while still in the habit of the world, he met a leper, and having become stronger than himself, went near and kissed him." That little bit described there at the end, Francis talks about himself. He was on horseback one day. His conversion had just begun. He knew how odious lepers had always been to him. He was afraid of them. He wanted nothing to do with them. He wanted to keep them as far away as he possibly could. He was on horseback, and he came with a leper walking toward him on the road, which you rarely saw. They weren't supposed to be there. They weren't supposed to be out. He stopped his horse, prepared to gallop around and disappear, when, and it's a beautiful phrase Thomas of Celano uses, having become stronger than himself. Who does that for us? Only our God. Having becoming stronger than himself, Francis descended from his horse, approached that man, the leper, who must have been wondering what in the name of God was going to happen, because how long had it been since any other human being had ever approached him? And Francis came closer and closer and closer and looked at him in the face, eye to eye, and reached out his 2 arms and embraced him to himself and kissed him. As Francis was dying in 1226, he called a person to him to take dictation of what he called his last testament. More than 20 years after that happened on the road, when Francis, as a dying man lying on the floor, wanted to leave what was most important with his brothers and with the church, these were the first words he dictated. "The Lord granted me, Brother Francis, to begin to do penance in this way. While I was in sin, it seemed very bitter to me to see lepers. And the Lord himself led me among them, and I had mercy upon them. And when I left them, that which seemed bitter to me was changed into sweetness of soul and body. And afterward, I lingered a little and left the world." Afterward, I lingered a little and left the world. He's giving the lepers, not just the one he met on the road that day, but afterwards he went down into the leper hospital and stayed with them and took care of them from day to day, as Thomas tells us. He's giving those lepers credit for the continuation and the depth of his own conversion. Brothers and sisters, who is a leper to me? Who is like a leper to you? Who is it who it scares me to be in their presence? It frightens me. Who is it who I don't want to see, never mind interact with? We can be fairly sure that right there is God's call to us to broaden the circle of our love, to seek reconciliation with those who are absolutely outside our experience or our desire. It seems to me what Jesus teaches us this morning comes finally through to us in 3 brief admonitions for us here at St. Matthew's, which I would put in these words: be present, be responsible, be loving. Be present together as we are here this morning. That's the only way we build one another up in love. That's one of the best ways God's own grace comes upon us to strengthen us, to make us stronger than ourselves, to broaden the circle of our love. Be responsible. Responsible for one another. Responsible to one another. Responsible even to strangers. Responsible even to the lepers of our day. And those two, if we live them out, I think will move us toward the ability to be loving. I listened to an interview recently with one of our great Episcopal writers of our day, Barbara, her last name is Taylor, right? Barbara Brown Taylor, thank you. And she's amazing. And she said, we should be aware that we're just one generation among passing generations. So that if you're sitting there now and you're thinking, be present, be responsible, be loving, maybe I can't do all three. Maybe we're not called to. Maybe we can start with be present. And then we hand the bucket to the next generation to be responsible, and to the third generation to be loving. It's a matter of grace. It's a matter of growth. It's a matter of openness to be constantly called to where we did not think we would have to go. And so, with tongue firmly in cheek, but also seriously, I want to suggest that we all begin this process now in a way that certainly will be unexpected, in a way that will be challenging to some of us, especially Lois and myself. A way that, well, I'd invite you to stand. I lived 10 years in and next to the city of New York, which meant I lived 10 years right up against Yankee fans. Extraordinarily painful, extraordinarily hard. We in this part of the country are most likely, most of us, to say, except for our bishop, damn those Yankees. I'm going to challenge us today to begin to open the circle of our love by repeating after me 4 simple words. Some of you are going to hate this. Are you ready? Here are the words. God love those Yankees. On the count of 3, 1, 2, 3.
God love those Yankees.
You, ladies and gentlemen, are the best.